I used to think fear came suddenly, like a loud noise or an obvious threat, something you could point at and say, this is where it started. But now I know fear can arrive quietly, slowly. It can slip into your life through something as ordinary as a smell drifting through the air. At first, I didn't even know what it was. Just this heavy, bitter odor that crept in through the backyard and clung to everything. It lingered in the curtains, settled into the couch cushions, and followed us from room to room like it belonged there. We tried to ignore it. I told myself it wasn't a big deal, that it would pass, that I was overreacting. But then my younger sibling walked into the kitchen rubbing their temples and said their head hurt. Then one of my kids complained their stomach felt weird. Another said the house smelled burny and asked why the air felt funny. That's when I stopped pretending it was nothing. I'm 23 years old. I live with my family and I have kids of my own. Life is loud and messy and exhausting in the normal ways. Toys on the floor, dishes in the sink, someone always needing something. But it was our life and it felt safe, predictable, until it didn't. The smell came every day. Sometimes late afternoon, sometimes at night, sometimes early enough that it followed us into bedtime. We shut the windows, turned on fans, lit candles, sprayed air freshener until my eyes burned. Nothing worked. It always came back. I knew what it was. Weed. Where we live, it's legal. And I don't have a problem with that. I've never judged anyone for it. Adults make their own choices. I believe that. But I also believe that your choices stop being just yours when they start affecting kids. I remember standing in the hallway one night, holding my child while they tried to fall asleep, and feeling this tight knot in my chest. Not anger, not even frustration. Helplessness. I didn't want drama. I didn't want a fight. I didn't want to be that neighbor. The one people whisper about. The one who can't mind their own business. So instead of confronting him, I did what I thought was responsible. I looked up the laws. Weed was legal, yes. But there were rules. You couldn't smoke in public. You couldn't drive with it within reach. There were regulations about nuisance behavior and community standards, even if they weren't always clear. I wasn't looking to get anyone arrested. I wasn't looking for revenge or control. I just wanted to know where the line was. Because no one tells you what to do when your home starts feeling hostile and you don't know why. So I made the call. I still remember how calm my voice sounded, how normal the conversation felt. Like this was just another everyday question, another small issue that would be sorted out and forgotten. The police came. They were polite, professional. They talked to my neighbor. They listened to me. And in the end, they told me the truth. He wasn't technically breaking the law. I felt embarrassed, relieved, disappointed, all at once. At least now I knew. At least I had tried. At least I could tell myself I did something instead of nothing. They even went further than I expected. They followed him for a few days to make sure he wasn't driving impaired. Everything checked out. No charges, no warnings, no drama. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The very next day, I heard shouting outside, loud enough to cut through the walls. Sharp enough to make my heart jump. Before I could even fully understand what was happening, he was there. My neighbor. His face red. His voice raised. His body language aggressive in a way that makes your instincts scream before your mind catches up. He wasn't asking questions. He wasn't confused. He was furious. He yelled about the police, about being watched, about someone trying to get him in trouble. His words came fast and loud, spilling over each other like he couldn't get them out quickly enough. I stood there, frozen. I kept my voice calm. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I didn't raise my tone. But inside, something shifted. Because then he said it. He said he knew I was the one who called. And when I asked how, he smiled. Not a friendly smile. Not even an angry one. A knowing one. He told me he had friends in the police department. That's how he found out. In that moment, my stomach dropped. Because it wasn't just anger anymore. It wasn't just a neighbor being upset. It was power. And he wanted me to know he had it. After that confrontation, nothing felt the same. The house didn't feel like shelter anymore. It felt exposed, like the walls were thinner, like every sound outside mattered more than it should. I started noticing things I never paid attention to before. The way he looked over when I stepped outside, the way his voice carried, the way silence suddenly felt heavy instead of peaceful. Then the dog started barking. At first, I told myself it was coincidence. Dogs bark. That's what they do. But this was different. This was relentless. Late at night, early in the morning, long stretches of noise that made sleep impossible. Dogs that had never been a problem before were suddenly everywhere, barking at nothing, barking at everything. My kids woke up crying. My siblings dragged themselves through the day exhausted, and every time it happened, I felt this cold certainty settle deeper in my chest. This wasn't accidental. This was punishment. He made it clear I wasn't welcome anywhere near his property. That was fine. I wouldn't have gone near it anyway. But the message wasn't about boundaries. It was about fear. I stopped going outside as much. I changed routines. I checked locks twice. I found myself listening more closely at night, counting seconds between barks, wondering what he might do next. And that's when the doubt crept in. Did I make a mistake? Was I wrong to call the police? Was I wrong to speak up? Should I have stayed quiet and just endured it? That question is dangerous, because it turns the blame inward. It makes you question your right to safety, your right to peace, your right to protect your family. And sitting there in the dark, listening to dogs bark like alarms that never shut off, I realized something terrifying. This was no longer about weed. This was about control. And I didn't know yet how far he was willing to take it. The barking didn't stop. That was the first thing I noticed when I woke up the next morning. My head was already aching before I even opened my eyes. My phone said it was barely past 5, and the sound was still coming from outside. Sharp, repetitive, angry, like the night itself refused to let go. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening. Each bark hit like a pulse. Not random, not playful. It was the kind of barking that feels intentional, like someone flipping a switch and walking away. I got up quietly so I wouldn't wake the kids. My body felt heavy, like I'd barely slept at all. When I looked out the window, I saw his backyard lights on, his dogs pacing. No leash, no attempt to quiet them. And then I saw him, standing there, calm, coffee mug in hand, watching. That was the moment it stopped feeling like coincidence. I didn't say anything, I didn't open the door, I didn't react, but something inside me hardened. The day dragged. Everyone was tired, tempers short. My youngest asked why the dogs were mad at us. I didn't know how to answer that without lying. By evening, I felt like I was bracing for something. Like when you know a storm is coming, not because the sky's dark, but because the air feels wrong. Sure enough, the barking started again that night. Louder, longer, and this time it wasn't just noise. It felt like a message. I checked the time, documented it, wrote it down. I didn't know why yet, just that something told me I would need proof. By the third night, I hadn't slept more than a few hours total. Fear does strange things when it mixes with exhaustion. Every sound feels closer. Every shadow feels heavier. My mind started running scenarios I didn't want to think about. What if he escalates? What if he comes onto our property? What if the dogs get loose? What if the police won't help because he knows people? That last thought stuck with me the most. Because the truth is, when someone tells you they have connections, it doesn't matter if it's true or exaggerated. The fear still works. I stopped letting the kids play outside alone. I stayed closer to the windows. I avoided stepping out when I knew he was around. And the worst part? He knew. You can tell when someone enjoys having power over you. There's a look, a posture, a confidence that doesn't come from peace, but from knowing you've unsettled someone. He never said another word to me. He didn't have to. The dogs said it for him. One night, the barking went on for nearly an hour straight. I finally picked up my phone and recorded it. My hands were shaking, not because I was angry, but because I felt trapped. I wasn't trying to win. I was trying to survive this without it getting worse. That's when I realized something important. Confrontation was exactly what he wanted. He wanted me to snap, to yell, to give him a reason to say I was the problem, to flip the narrative. So I didn't give him that. Instead, I changed tactics. I stopped thinking like a neighbor. I started thinking like someone who needed protection. The next morning, I started a log. Not emotional, not dramatic, just facts, date, time, duration, description, no assumptions, no accusations, just reality on paper. That night, the barking started again. I added another entry, then another, and another. After a week, the pattern was undeniable: always late, always early, always after I'd been outside, always when the house was quiet enough that the noise felt intentional. It wasn't just annoying anymore, it was harassment. And something else started happening too. Small things. His car idling longer than necessary when I was outside. The dogs being let out the moment my lights went off. The feeling that every move I made was being noticed. People underestimate how terrifying it is to feel watched without being followed. Nothing obvious, nothing illegal, just enough to keep you on edge. One afternoon, I caught myself rehearsing conversations in my head, imagining what I'd say if he approached me again. Imagining how I'd keep my voice steady. That's when I knew this had gone too far. I wasn't living anymore, I was managing fear. So I made another call, but not to the police. I called non-emergency services. I reported excessive barking. Nothing else, no history, no drama. Just noise. They told me they'd look into it. The dogs were quiet that night, not silent, but manageable. I slept for the first time in days. The next morning, I felt almost hopeful. That didn't last. The following night, the barking came back worse than ever, longer, angrier. Like punishment for daring to say something. And this time, he stood outside again. Lights on, dogs barking, watching. I remember sitting on the floor with my back against the wall, holding my phone, wondering how something so small had spiraled so fast. I kept asking myself the same question: why is this happening? And then it hit me. People like him don't get angry because you wronged them. They get angry because you reminded them they're not untouchable. That realization didn't make me feel better. It made me more careful. I called animal control next. Same approach, same calm tone, same facts. I didn't say his name, I didn't mention weed, I didn't mention the police, just barking dogs. This time something changed, not immediately, but subtly. The barking didn't stop, but it became less predictable, less confident. Like someone unsure how far they could push before consequences arrived. He stopped standing outside as much. The watching lessened. Not gone, but reduced. That's when I understood the difference between loud power and quiet power. Loud power yells, threatens, intimidates. Quiet power documents. And quiet power waits. I didn't feel brave. I felt tired, worn down. But there was something new underneath it all. Control. Not over him, but over my response. I realized I didn't need to win a confrontation. I just needed to outlast his tantrum. And people who rely on fear hate patience more than anything. Because patience takes away their audience. Still, the fear didn't disappear completely. Every night, I wondered if he'd snap again, if something worse was coming. And that's when the situation took another turn. One evening, as I was putting the kids to bed, I heard his voice again, not yelling, laughing, loudly, with friends, outside. The dogs were barking too, but this time it sounded celebratory, like he was showing off. I stood there in the hallway, listening, and felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about ego. And egos don't back down quietly. I didn't know it yet. But the most important decision of this entire situation was still ahead of me. That night, I didn't sleep at all. Not because of the barking this time, but because of the laughter. There's something unsettling about hearing someone laugh loudly outside your home late at night when you already feel unsafe. It doesn't sound like joy, it sounds like mockery. Like a reminder that they're comfortable, and you're not. I lay there listening, counting breaths, trying to calm my heart. The dogs barked on and off, but the real noise was in my head. Questions I couldn't shut off. Scenarios I didn't want to imagine. What if he escalates? What if this turns physical? What if his friends really do protect him? I hated that last thought the most, because once you start believing that systems won't protect you, fear digs deeper. The next morning, I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. Dark circles, tense shoulders, jaw clenched like I was bracing for impact. This wasn't living, this was waiting. And waiting is exactly what fear wants you to do. That's when I made a decision, not out of anger, not out of desperation, but out of exhaustion. I decided I was done being quiet in the wrong ways. I wasn't going to confront him, I wasn't going to yell, I wasn't going to play his game, but I wasn't going to disappear either. I sat down and organized everything. Every recording, every log entry, every sleepless night written down in black and white. Dates, times, patterns. When you see it all laid out like that, it stops feeling like chaos, it becomes evidence. And evidence changes everything. I contacted the city's noise ordinance department, not the police, not patrol officers, the actual department that handles ongoing disturbances. I explained the situation calmly. I told them I was afraid to confront the neighbor. I told them there had been retaliation after a prior issue and that I felt unsafe. I didn't accuse, I didn't speculate. I let the facts speak. They listened. They told me something that surprised me. You're doing the right thing. Those words hit harder than I expected. Because no one had said that yet. They explained how noise complaints work. How repeated, documented incidents matter more than one dramatic call. How animal noise is taken seriously when it disrupts households, especially those with children. For the first time in weeks, I felt like someone was on my side. That night, the dogs barked again. But this time, I wasn't frozen. I added another entry. And another. 2 days later, someone came out. Not with sirens, not with confrontation, just official notice. I watched from inside as they spoke to him. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I didn't need to. His body language said everything. Arms crossed, jaw tight. The confidence I'd seen before was gone, not replaced with fear, but with irritation. The kind that comes when someone realizes they're no longer untouchable. That night, the dogs were quiet, not perfectly silent, but normal, occasional barking. The kind that fades into the background of everyday life. I slept, really slept. The next few days were tense. Not because anything happened, but because I was waiting for the backlash. It never came. Instead, something unexpected happened. Distance. He stopped watching. Stopped lingering outside. Stopped performing. The power he thought he had evaporated once he realized I wasn't reacting emotionally anymore. That's the thing about people who use intimidation. They rely on chaos. When you remove chaos, they're left with nothing. Weeks passed. The smell still came sometimes, but less often. And when it did, it didn't linger the way it used to. I don't know if he adjusted his habits or just lost interest in provoking me. What I do know is this. The fear that once filled my house slowly loosened its grip. The kids slept better. The house felt lighter. I stopped flinching at every sound, and with clarity came reflection. I thought a lot about that first phone call, the one that started everything. I replayed it in my head over and over. Was it worth it? The honest answer is complicated. If I could go back, would I still protect my family? Yes. Without hesitation. But I also learned something important, something no one tells you. Standing up for yourself doesn't always look like winning. Sometimes it looks like enduring. It looks like staying calm when someone wants you to explode. It looks like writing things down when someone wants you to forget. It looks like choosing systems over shouting. I learned that fear feeds on isolation, and documentation is the opposite of isolation. Because once your experience is written, recorded, and witnessed, it's no longer just inside your head. And here's the part that still makes me angry, even now. He never apologized, not once. But I stopped needing him to, because the goal was never to change him. The goal was to feel safe again. And I do. If you're watching this and you're dealing with a neighbor like this, someone who intimidates, retaliates, or makes you feel small for speaking up, hear me clearly. You're not wrong, you're not dramatic, you're not weak. You're responding to a situation that pushed you past your limits. And there is a difference between confrontation and accountability. You don't need to scream to be heard. You don't need to fight to be strong. You don't need permission to protect your peace. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stay boring, factual, and patient. Because patience terrifies bullies more than anger ever could. I never wanted a story like this, but if telling it helps even one person feel less alone, then it matters. Because fear thrives in silence, and silence is something I'm no longer willing to give. If you've ever dealt with a nightmare neighbor, if you've ever felt powerless in your own home, or if you believe these stories need to be told, subscribe to the channel. Because this isn't just drama, it's real life. And the next story might sound a lot like yours.